I will admit, I had a bad week last week. I did not do well. 6-7 in my picks, below 500. My worst week of the season since week 7. But it's a brand new week, week 14 of the NFL season, and we are in crunch time. 5 more weeks of the regular season. And I am ready to get to my week 14 picks. Before I get into that, I do want to mention I am hosting an ESPN Bowl Mania group for the bowl season for college football. I will put the link to the group in the description box down below for anybody that would like to join. And with that, let's get to the week 14 predictions as I look to bounce back from a below 500 week. As always, we begin with Thursday night football. This week for Thursday night football, Patriots and Steelers. And I'll be honest, this matchup I do not like. I am picking the Steelers in this matchup though, as this does feel like a matchup where I have to pick somebody. This matchup is Bailey Zappi for the Patriots and Mitch Trubisky for the Steelers. The Patriots only have 2 wins on the season. However, the Patriots, they have competed really well in a few games this season, including last week against the Chargers, only a 6-0 loss. The last few weeks, the Patriots defense, they have held their own in games. And I think they hold their own this one as well. I anticipate this is going to be a very low scoring game. Probably 13-10. Whatever the over-under is, I'm anticipating that we'll get the under in this one with a Steelers win. Buccaneers and Falcons. We saw these two face off earlier in the season, and the Falcons won 16-13 on a last-second field goal by Younghoe Koo. Bijan Robinson was sick for this game, and he was on a limited snap count. I believe Bijan only took 7 to 8 snaps in that game for Atlanta. And I have been talking about how the Buccaneers are an underrated team throughout most of the season. I will tell you, I am worried about making a pick here. I am picking the Falcons. They're on a 2-game winning streak. The defense has been playing well the majority of the season. Jesse Bates has been a force on the Falcons defense this year. But every single time I seem to buy into the Falcons, they let me down. It happened against the Titans. But Desmond Ridder is better at home than he is on the road. And I think that contributes to a Falcons win. As the last couple of weeks, Desmond Ridder hasn't been doing as bad as what people are thinking. But he has shown some improvements. And I think he continues his hot streak at home. I like the Falcons, but I would not be surprised if this is one of my picks that I got wrong this week. Because time and time again, when I start to buy into the Falcons, they somehow let me down and lose. Lions Bears. We saw these two in week 11, and the Bears were up by 12 late, but then the Lions, they came back and won. The Lions with a win last week over the Saints, and they started off quick, but as the game progressed, the Saints, they got back into the game, and it was survive and advance for the Lions. Now they go on the road to take on a Bears team that is coming off of their bye week. Leading up into that, a confidence-boosting win over the Vikings on Monday Night Football. And Justin Fields has been playing really well since he came back from his injury, and I think he has a good game this week as well. But I just think the difference in this game, I just think the Lions will have their way with the running game of David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs, and I think that is the difference in this game. And I think this game potentially will be high scoring. I think it's going to be one of the more higher scoring games of the week. I think the Lions win a high scoring game The running game is the difference in this ball game. Colts and Bengals. And I'm going to be honest, I do not know which way to lean in this game. This feels like a coin flip game, as both teams are coming off of an emotional victory. I should say an emotional victory in overtime. The Colts over the Titans and the Bengals over the Jaguars. I anticipate that both teams will be able to run the ball very well in this matchup. I think Zach Moss has a bounce back game. I think Joe Mixon has another good game. And I just think it comes down to overall quarterback play. Both quarterbacks are very confident. Jake Browning, he had his moment this week against the Jaguars as he was efficient. Gardner Minshew, he has been, to an extent, a journeyman in the NFL. Not as much of a journeyman as Ryan Fitzpatrick or even Joshua Dobbs, but he has been through a couple of teams. But I'm going to go with the Bengals. This is probably one of those picks I do get wrong, but this one is just a coin flip to me. I just think the Bengals, they have a little bit more confidence, despite being on a short week. With them going on the road Monday night, coming back home into the jungle, I think the Bengals, they make it 2 in a row. Jaguars and Browns. And this is the last game that I have recorded, as I don't go in order when doing these prediction slides. This was the last one because I was waiting to see the full extent of Trevor Lawrence's injury, as it was unknown, as he left the game in the fourth quarter with an ankle injury after offensive tackle Walker Little accidentally stepped on his ankle. We know that now he is considered week to week. The injury he has, the extent of it, it is considered a week-to-week injury. I am leaning towards him not playing in this game, but I would not be surprised if he does play in this game because Trevor Lawrence is one of those quarterbacks that is built different, as he is a really tough QB. But I'm going to pick the Browns to win this one, as we're looking towards a matchup of CJ Beathard versus Joe Flacco. And I think that some people, they may end up betting on the Jaguars anyway, based on how the Browns performed last week against the Rams, where they got blown out. But I think the Browns bounce back. They're back in the dog pound. The Browns get back to winning. Panthers and Saints. And I'm going to get this one out of the way really quickly. I'm picking the Saints. The last few games, the Saints, they haven't been able to finish. They haven't been able to correct their wrongs in their last few games. I think this week it finally comes together and the Saints get back on the winning track. And I want to speak honestly about how I feel about the Panthers right now. With the Panthers being officially out of playoff contention, I think the Panthers need to just start Andy Dalton the rest of the season. I get that you want to get Bryce Young the experience. I understand that. But you don't want to risk an injury to your franchise quarterback, especially everything you gave up to get Bryce Young number 1 overall. Have Andy Dalton start the last 5 games of the year. Let Bryce Young sit and watch and gain some knowledge from a veteran quarterback in Andy Dalton. Do I think the Panthers will do this? No, I do not, because the Panthers, they have that emotional attachment to Bryce Young. Knowing they drafted number 1 overall, knowing all the draft capital they gave up, I don't think they'll do it, but it would be in their best interest if they did it. Because we've seen so many quarterbacks get season-ending injuries this season. We've also seen in the past quarterbacks get career-ending injuries. And with the Panthers having nothing to play for, I think it's best to start the veteran Andy Dalton the rest of the way. Texans and Jets. The Jets, they want Zach Wilson as the quarterback again, but Zach Wilson is being very reluctant. And let me tell you, I was very tempted to call for the upset here and to pick the Jets to win. CJ Stroud has been playing phenomenal this entire season. However, the reason why I was wanting to pick the upset, but I'm not picking it, I think the Texans win this game. The Texans are playing the Jets, and the Jets are 9th in total defense. The Texans have gone up against 3 top 10 defenses from a stat standpoint this season. And in those games, they're 0-3. Plus, we've seen the Jets throughout this season go up against some of the best quarterbacks in the league and embarrass them, as that's been a point Robert Saleh has made a couple times. I feel like worst case scenario, the Jets would at least cover in this game, as I do think there is value in taking the Jets at plus 6.5, or if you're able to take an alternate line, maybe plus 7 to 9 points. I can't see the Texans winning this game by double digits. Even though on paper it would seem that way that they would, with CJ Stroud leading the NFL in passing yards. I just can't see that because depending on which Jets defense shows up, not only could the Jets cover but pull off the upset, as we've seen that happen quite a few times in the last 2 seasons. I don't see it here, but I would not be surprised if it happens. Rams and Ravens. It was great to see Cooper Kupp find the end zone again, as he has been struggling these last several weeks. And Cooper Kupp is confident again. And that is big for the Rams, as they need all the confidence they can get. But I don't think any confidence that they got last week from doing well against the Browns is going to translate into this week. Although the Browns are number 1 in total defense and the Ravens are number 2 in total defense, the Ravens are coming off of their bye. And if they weren't, then I'd be open to the idea of the Rams maybe pulling off the upset or at least covering, because there is no team in the NFL that is invincible. Every team has their weaknesses. Every team is going to have an off game or 2 throughout the year, maybe even 3 sometimes. But I don't see the Ravens having an off game anytime soon, even though to an extent you can consider the Chargers game an off game for the Ravens with their standards. But I expect Zay Flowers to find the end zone again, which I called a couple weeks back, where Zay Flowers would have 2 touchdowns against the Chargers. I think he finds the end zone this week, and the Ravens win convincingly, as coming off of their bye week, they look like the strongest team in the AFC on both sides of the ball. Vikings Raiders, a matchup of 2 teams that have had an up and down season, but they're still resilient going into week 14. The Vikings, with a slow start to the season, losing Justin Jefferson to the IR, but he was activated last week, and he is set to play in this matchup. Losing Kirk Cousins for the season with an Achilles injury. Trading for Cam Akers, but losing him to an Achilles injury weeks later. For the Raiders, a slow start to the season for Josh Jacobs. Josh McDaniels gets fired from the Raiders. Antonio Pierce takes over as the interim coach. And there is new signs of life with this Raiders team. And I've said it before, but Antonio Pierce needs to be the permanent head coach no matter what happens the rest of the way. Because this Raiders team looks 10 times better with Antonio Pierce than with Josh McDaniels. As the players, they really want to play for Antonio Pierce, as Antonio Pierce can relate to the players really well. Josh Jacobs has been getting involved more with Antonio Pierce. He even made a statement saying that Devontae Adams is one of the best receivers in the league. And if you don't get him the ball, then you aren't a good coach. Feeding Josh Jacobs. Josh Jacobs has the most carries in the NFL. And I think that continues, and I think with Josh Jacobs being well rested coming off of a bye, I think he's a difference maker in this game. I think the Raiders, they pull off the upset in a battle of teams that have had ups and downs, still resilient going into crunch time in the NFL season. Seahawks and 49ers. The Seahawks played on Thursday night last week against the Cowboys, and it was an offensive battle. I mention every single week, which Seahawks defense shows up for game day will determine how the Seahawks will perform, because their defense is their bread and butter. If their defense is a good defense, they'll most likely win. But if their defense is mid-tier to bottom tier, then they will most likely not win. We saw these two on Thanksgiving night a couple weeks ago, and the 49ers won in dominant fashion. The Seahawks, they couldn't get much going on offense that night. And despite being well rested by playing on Thursday last week, they go on the road to take on a confident 49ers team. A 49ers team that went into Philly last week and put on a clinic on the Eagles. Brock Purdy is currently the favorite to win MVP. And I think the 49ers, they keep rolling. As once the 49ers got to their bye week, they have just looked completely unstoppable, and I expect that to continue. I think the 49ers, they win by at least 14 points. But once again, if the Seahawks defense, if they show up for this game, and I'm talking show up as they are on their A game, then there's a chance. But if not, the 49ers will run away with this one. Bills and Chiefs. And I feel like no matter which way I go in for this game, I feel like I'm walking into a trap either way. As the Bills are coming off of their bye week before that, a heartbreaking loss in overtime to the Eagles. The Chiefs last week, a loss to the Packers in another game where the Chiefs, they really looked sluggish on offense. Both of these teams have looked sluggish on offense for almost the entire season. Neither of these teams have been as dominant as we've been used to seeing over the last few seasons. But it is always a good matchup when these two are against each other. But I'm not anticipating a high-scoring game in this. That is what people want, but I'm not anticipating it. As I do think that a lot of people will be hyping up this game. As I don't blame them. Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes, two of the best quarterbacks in the league. The problem is, most of the time, when people hype up a lot of games saying it's going to be a lot of points scored, there's going to be a lot of points, most of the time, there isn't a lot of points. And I think that is the case just like it was last year, where a lot of people hyped up that game because it was a rematch of perhaps the best playoff game of all time, at least a non-Super Bowl playoff game, as it was back and forth the last few minutes. I think the Chiefs win this game, and I think it's in the neighborhood of 24-20, with both offenses still not expressing and asserting their dominance as we've seen the last few seasons. Broncos and Chargers. And I see how it is, Chargers. A couple weeks ago, I said that until the Chargers can prove to me that they can win a one-possession game, that they can win against one of the stronger teams in the NFL, I can't take them seriously. I mentioned last week with them playing the Patriots, despite it being a road game, despite the Patriots having their moments this season where they are at least competing in games. I talk about how it shouldn't have to be a one-possession game. It turns out that it is. The Chargers only win 6-0. So the Chargers won a one-possession game, which I'll give them credit for that, even though it is against the Patriots. They at least shown they can win a one-possession game. But can they prove to me that they can win against one of the stronger teams in the NFL? The Broncos right now are at 500. And that is not something that I would have had on my bingo card back in week 3. But a little bump on the road last week, losing to the Texans on the road. But that was a game that the Broncos were in at the very end. And there's been a couple times this season where the Broncos, they have lost one possession games. But a handful of times the Broncos, they've been able to win one possession games. And I'm going with the team that I can at least rely on more winning a one possession game, and that is the Broncos. And I anticipate this being a one possession game where it comes down to, can the Chargers win in a one possession game? Is that's what I think it's going to be. But the answer is no. I am picking the Broncos. Sunday night football, Eagles, Cowboys, and welcome to my trap game of the week. Currently, the Cowboys are favored by 3.5. And there are reasons for that. They are well rested by playing on Thursday night last week. A third straight home game for the Cowboys. They have not left Dallas in weeks. Dak Prescott has been playing like the MVP these last several weeks. He's been putting up good numbers. And the Eagles, they had an abysmal performance against the 49ers last week. And those are big reasons why the Cowboys right now are favored. But Vegas knows what they're doing. They know that the Cowboys are America's team, and the majority of the public will be betting on them to win this game, as I anticipate at least 75 to 80% of the money to be on the Cowboys. And Vegas knows this, because they know that the majority of the public, they tend to go against a team that lost by double digits the week prior, as this is going to be a blindside for a lot of people. I think the Eagles win this game. And of course, I'll be blindsided if the Cowboys win this game, as I am picking against them. But this is a very angry Eagles team, and they'll be fired up for this game, as I think this game is going to be fairly similar to when these two played earlier in the season in Philadelphia. I think it goes down to the wire once again, and I think the Eagles defense, they rise to the occasion when it matters. I think this is a big night for Darius Slay, and the Eagles get the victory. Titans and Dolphins in one of the two Monday Night Football games we have this week. They'll both be played at the same time, one on ESPN, the other on ABC. I anticipate one of the Monday night games being a runaway game and the other being decided in the trenches. A game that will come down to the wire. This game I anticipate being a runaway game, as I think the Dolphins, they win this game convincingly. Derrick Henry has had strong performances the last couple of weeks. But I just think that this Dolphins offense will be too much for the Titans. There's a reason why the Dolphins are favored by more than 2 touchdowns in this game. As Tyreek Hill, he is looking to get to 2,000 receiving yards on the season. And he is really close to that, as I anticipate that he is going to get there. I really will be surprised if the Titans make this a game, and I'm not underestimating them. I just think this Dolphins team, I just think they are a strong team against teams that are below 500, as that's been a narrative for the Dolphins, as they always take down the below 500 teams so easily, but they can't beat one of the strong teams. But luckily for the Dolphins, they're at home, plus the Titans, they're a below 500 team. They're not a strong team whatsoever. Plus the Titans are coming off of an emotional loss against the Colts in overtime. The second of 2 Monday Night Football games being played at the same time, Packers and Giants. And I do anticipate this game being won in the trenches. Both teams, I anticipate, will have their way in the running game in this one. As both of these teams, they are bottom tier in run defense. Jordan Love, the last couple of weeks, the last 3 games, he has had strong performances. He is getting better as the season progresses, and I'm very happy to see that, as I've been rooting for Jordan Love since the moment the Packers drafted him. And the Giants, they've been winning games. They're on a winning streak coming off of their bye week. And I do think there is value in taking the points here with the Giants, as right now it is 6.5. The Giants are coming off of their bye week. The Packers, they're coming off of an emotional victory over the defending champion Chiefs. I think the Packers do win this game, though, as Jordan Love, he's been playing well, and he's been playing clean football. He hasn't been turning the ball over. Both of these teams throughout the season, they've been in games the majority of the year. Some of it has been their offense just couldn't get done, especially the Packers. But I'm thinking this game is going to be a little low scoring, as I do think both defenses are going to hold their own from start to finish, and I'll be surprised if this is a high scoring game. I think in a fairly low scoring game, I think the Packers win, and they win 4 games in a row. As the Packers schedule the rest of the year, it's fairly winnable. I'd say pretty winnable. And that will do it for my Week 14 NFL predictions. Comment your picks down below. Like, share, comment, and subscribe. Until next time, enjoy the football this weekend. We are in crunch time in the NFL season. Just 5 more weeks until the playoffs begin.